Yo. His arms is smelly, butt cheeks always sweaty. He'll fart if you tickle his belly. Loud and deadly, he's gangsta. Brings his own food when he comes to the telly. He eats peanut butter sandwiches without the jelly. With no drink, the dry mouth, he wants to shout. He's straining on the toilet, but the poop won't come out. He won't allow, it's staying in, get out me now. Couple extra pushes and it's all over. Plows, then he felt.
What's going on, YouTube? So this Wednesday, I will be entering the PvP event that the developers are hosting with Alienware, and I thought, let's make a video on the build that I will be using, especially because I don't do very many build videos, and a lot of you guys want to know, what exactly am I using? So this first part of the video, we're going to just break down all of the things that I'm using, consumables, set pieces, talk about some substitutions and why I'm using them. And then the second phase of the video will be the pros and cons of this build with some gameplay footage of me in some battlegrounds. And here's what we look like unbuffed. It's important to note, obviously, that we're going to be gaining a considerable amount of buffs. The ones that we already have are Stage 3 Vampire, which I think for battlegrounds is very helpful. Usually in open world Cyrodiil, I'm not usually a big vampire supporter, just because the fights are usually drawn out a little bit more, and then your regular cost abilities can be a little bit more annoying. And really, the flame damage, you take quite a bit of that in Cyrodiil. But we also have access to Minor Resolve, Minor Protection, Major Gallop, the Mage as our Mundus Stone, Major Prophecy, and Major Savagery. In our front bar, we use a Lightning Staff, a bit of a Lightning Staff enjoyer. I think it's easier to heavy attack people with the Sharpen trait, and it is the set Crafty Alfiq. Crafty Alfiq is a pretty big staple when it comes to pretty much any PvP sorcerer. You might be thinking to yourself, Jake, why exactly do sorcerers love Crafty Alfiq? But you don't see that same love on other Magicka classes, and it's because sorcerers love shields. And the easiest way to get a big juicy shield is to have a lot of total Magicka and health, and that's where really this build comes from, is we're basically bubble boys. Now, back bar, it is a resto staff, but you have two options here. You can either use a resto staff, and then maybe you can use some rejuvenation things from the resto staff line, or you can also use an ice staff. The key thing, though, is that it's in defending. So we went from sharpened on our front bar, defending on our back bar. That's because whenever I'm building a build, I like the front bar to be the offensive bar, the back bar is our Please Don't Die Jake bar, and it's also in Crafty Alfiq, which I haven't said yet comes from Northern Elsewhere. Very cheap on the market, easy purchase. Next up is Roxas, which comes from Balsanar. Now, this is a really fun piece. I have the enchant being Magicka. It's also in Well Fitted. Bit of a roll dodger myself every so often. Why I love this set is not only does it give you good recoveries for its one piece, it's two piece. Each second you're in combat, you gain a stack of Dark Light, up to 30 stack. Each stack increases your stam recovery, mag recovery, and health recovery by 8, which is pretty nice. Meaning, as a sorcerer, not only am I getting huge recoveries in my Magicka, and technically health, but that Battle Spear kind of takes a lot of that away, same with being a vampire, but I also have tons of stamina. I can roll dodge, sprint, block. Having access to being able to do those things is very helpful, and you're in a battleground. You're pretty much always going to be in combat. But I do want to quickly highlight some cons, though, for this build, is that as you go into battlegrounds and as you get into combat, your meters build. So we are also using some other sets that benefit from being in combat longer. So you actually are not going to be at full strength until you've been in combat for a little bit. So just keep that in mind as we go. Next up is a bit of a fun piece, and it is Druid. So we actually use two-piece Druid on this build. Now, a lot of people think, why don't you use Trainee? Well, you'll see that here in a minute. We use this as our heavy piece. We always want to make sure that any build we use for PvP always has at least one light, one medium, one heavy to get access to the Undaunted Metal perk. This is our heavy reinforced chest piece. Then we're back with Shoulders of Light, where you can see we're still putting magic on these bad boys. Medium belt, that is actually our Trainee piece. Put that in pen. We actually also use two-piece Trainee. You can see Trainee and Druid give you two of the best, one-piece and two-piece bonuses. 1,458 health, 1,458 Magicka. That's quite a bit, especially when you factor in that Crafty Alfiq is a 5-piece, only gives you 1,000 extra, because it doesn't give you access to a 1-piece. So keep that in mind. That's why I love that combination together. Unfortunately, if you put its 3-piece on, you're only getting access to a little bit of extra stamina, which we do not need any more stamina. on this build, but we also, you can see, we put some in-pen pieces on there. Then we went back to light, well-fitted, back to in-pen. We have our breeches. You could also change this to heavy if you want a little more junk in the trunk, make this reinforced as well, or you can also do that with your feet. We did that with light, and we are back with Max Magicka and in-pen. Jewelry gets a little spicy here because we actually go healthy on here. So an important consideration when you're going into Battlegrounds versus Cyrodiil, your champion points aren't active. So I have a little bit of more junk in the trunk. We put a little healthy trait on here. Some people love to do all sorts of different combinations, and truthfully, jewelry, you can get real crazy. I mean, you can make yourself walk faster with jewelry. So the opportunities are endless, but I like to keep it simplistic. We go healthy, we go max mag, and we go healthy again. And then our final set that we use is Death Dealer's Feet, which basically every 2 seconds we're in combat up to stacks of 30. We're increasing our max stam, health, and magicka by 88, which is just great. Next, we got to talk about the skills quickly. So I like to slap on that Inner Light. Inner Light not only gives you access while slotted to a bunch of extra weapon and spell crit courtesy of Major Savagery and Prophecy, but it also increases your max magicka by 5%. Those of you who don't know, increasing your max magicka is great because not only is it making this shield even better, because you can see the second half of the text here, it is capped to your max health or magicka, so it's important that you have a lot of that. And you can see here, these pretty big shields that we're putting on ourselves. And if there are no pets affected, we're literally healing ourselves for 5,702. Absolutely fantastic. But it also increases how much damage you do. So more magicka, more damage. Crystal Frags is a pretty common, wham bam, thank you ma'am. Mage's Wrath is a pretty common execute. And Haunting Curse is a pretty common, let me slap this on somebody, see if they're not paying attention, because after 3.5 seconds, they explode, and then after another 8.5 seconds, they explode again. Ice Comet, bit flavorful. Some people like Ice Comet, some people like the other morph, some people like Dawnbreaker. It just depends. The only important thing to remember, too, as we talk about these skills, that I just like to remind people is that whether or not you have different ones on your bar, it actually gives you different benefits. So just keep that in mind. Feel free to take a look and think to yourself, do I want, to have, for example, Magicka Controller, which increases your max Magicka and Magicka recovery by 2% for each Mage's Guild ability slotted, which can be pretty helpful, obviously. And this is our front bar. So this is our DPS bar. Some other notable changes that I've taken out. Every so often, I will get rid of Mage's Light, then I will change it out for something different. Sometimes the scrying ability, Soul Burst, is a good potential option. It just depends. Usually I like the scrying options because you can tweak the buffs and debuffs that you put on people. Let's talk about the defensive back bar. And pretty much an auto include on any Sorc build right now is actually just access to Bound Aegis. Now, Bound Aegis is a fantastic thing because you just need to have this on your bar, and you're getting an increase of max magicka by 8% and minor resolve and minor protection. Those give you an increase of your physical and spell resistance by 29.74 and reduce your damage taken by 5%. Now, another really cool option that I like is Healing Torch, because it's a scribing ability, and I love being able to tweak the abilities that I get to use. Now, what I get to do with this is I get access to a heal. Now, a lot of people are like, why do you want a stamina heal on your Sorcerer? And it's because of all of my recoveries, I use tri-stat potions, I have tons of stamina. And so I can use this to give myself a heal, remove negative effects, and major brutality and major sorcery for 10 seconds. So I give myself a damage buff, a heal, and I can remove negative effects with each sweep, which is just fantastic. But also, I have a bit of a heal for here as well. Healing Contingency. So this will heal myself for 11,000, reduce my damage taken by 8% for 8 seconds, unnamed buff, and then I gave myself minor intellect and minor endurance for 22 seconds, which is a 15% increase to my magicka and stamina recoveries, meaning that I could do this all night, basically. Then you got your generic Hurricane. You can give yourself a little bit of a Hurricane movement speed buff. This will also give you your major resolve. Some people love to use Mighty Chuden. That way, as a sorcerer, they always have access to major resolve. So some people don't use Roxas because, let's be realistic, we have probably well more recovery than we need to. The reason that we kind of go this hard into it is because we are a vampire, so we get the Undeath perk. Keeps us alive a little bit longer, but we are also paying extra to then cast our normal ability. So we got a little bit more recovery to, compensate. But if you weren't a vampire, you could easily swap out Roxas for Mighty Chuden, which just gives you major resolve and some armor. And then we always have our Streak. Streak is also not just a getaway, it's also a stun, meaning that you can go into conflict with this bad boy ready to go. And then we have Negate Bubble on the back bar. I just love negating people. It can be a massive change in the tide of battle. Being able to silence your enemies is just fantastic. And I do go with Bewitched Sugar Skulls. It's just a cheap option. It gives you access to tons of max health, max stam, max magicka, and health recovery. Unfortunately, we're a vampire. We got Battle Spirit that's going to be nerfed, unfortunately. So the health recovery is not very helpful. But because we're pumping out tons of maximum resources, I still use it, but there are definitely some alternatives you could go with. Some people love Clockwork Citrus Fillets. That gives you max health, health recovery, max magicka, and magicka recovery. Again, I don't think it's worth losing on that stamina, even if you are just using Hurricane and blocking and roll dodging. I still think having maximum stamina is just great. And by using this buff food, you're losing out on quite a bit of stamina. And I love me some Tri-Stat Potions. Literally just by logging in, you're getting tons of these. And the major intellect, endurance, and fortitude, which is giving you all your recoveries by 30%, will also stack with our minor buff. So we are literally going to be going for days. Our Sorcerer has stockpiles of resources to go all day, every day. We have mentioned some skills that are scrying exclusive, so let's talk about their non-scrying counterparts that I commonly will switch them for. So, Dark Conversion is great because you're converting stamina to health and magicka. Literally the greatest trade, one of the best trades that you could possibly ask for. You could easily put this on your back bar in either the Y or the B slot. Crit Surge is also another fantastic option for you because you gain Major Brutality Sorcery, which increases your damage done by 20%. This lasts for 33 seconds, and while active, dealing critical damage heals you for 3,366 health. So not only are you giving yourself a very long buff, you're also healing yourself. This can also go on that back bar slot, and commonly that's where I would use it. Another very popular back bar item is Overload, being able to just lightning, very popular back bar, or even a front bar option, because not only are you getting a very powerful attack, you're essentially getting to use it for free because you're just using your ultimate. You're not using your magicka, stamina, or another resource. Some people love to put Temporal Guard on the back bar because that gives you the ability to go back in time. And the beautiful thing is, if you use the other morph, you can actually use it while you're under the effects of crowd control. Spoiler alert, one of the only ways your Sorcerer will die is if you're knocked down and unable to do anything, because you have such crazy sustain and resources that as long as you are on your feet, you're good. So if you have the ability to just go backwards in time every time you get knocked down, that's a pretty powerful tool that you can use. The only unfortunate thing is you're already getting minor protection from other places, notably your bound Aegis, so you're not going to really need that bonus, but being able to switch to the other morph and then being able to use it while you're under the effects of crowd control, you're knocked down, is very helpful. And then there's Dawnbreaker. Dawnbreaker is just great regardless of what you do. You can use it to give yourself some more damage afterwards, unnamed damage, but for 20 seconds. Or you can make it a stun and increase the damage that it does. And you can see the damage numbers here are just pretty crazy. Obviously, it's an ultimate. You would hope that it does a lot of damage, but still, Dawnbreaker, great option for you. Another thing, too, is if you're like Jake, you don't have access to scrying abilities, you can still use Resolving Vigor. You get a heal over time, so you can heal yourself, shield yourself, then go back to your front bar, and you'll have a nice little heal over time for yourself. That's the whole bonus to using the Resto Staff line. So obviously, Resto Staff line is just the magicka equivalent of using Resolving Vigor, so we're not going to break everything down continuously, because we don't want this video for too long, but if you want to use the magicka equivalent, you can use a Resto Staff as your back bar, or if you want to be a little bit more defensive, get a little more bonuses for using an Ice Staff, use an Ice Staff on the back bar. But if you're like, I'm using an Ice Staff, and because when you block with an Ice Staff, you're using magicka, you're like, alrighty, even more stamina, boom, use Resolving Vigor. You, as a Sorcerer, have tons of stamina. You can see our recoveries just go absolutely bonkers when we stack them all together. So just feel free to use it all together. And now, with some gameplay, let's talk about the pros and cons of this bad boy. Let's start with the cons, because we talked about them already. You have tons of abilities. Pretty much every single ability, Except for Inner Light and Bound Aegis, you are actively pressing. You might be using your Negate. You might be using your Hardened Ward, your Crystal Frags, your Mage's Wrath, your Haunting Curse. Because those are all pretty important abilities to have. Your Mage's Wrath is your execute. Your Haunting Curse gives the enemy a bit of a surprise. Bam. Your Crystal Frags can insta-proc for tons of damage. You have Healing Contingency. You've got your Healing Torch. You've got your Hurricane, which is giving you not only movement speed, but also giving you access to Major Resolve, which makes you much tankier. You can literally teleport yourself. You can negate everybody around you and silence them all. You have so many buttons that you can press, and that can be pretty overwhelming. You can look at it as a pro because you've got a lot of tool and you're in a tool, belt. But if you're new to a sorcerer, this can definitely be a bit overwhelming. And it will also be very reliant on you keeping up your buffs. The other con, unfortunately, too, is that a lot of your sets require you to be in conflict for a little while for you to gain their full maximum stacks. Unfortunately, the enemies are not always worried about you building up your Death Dealer's feat to a full 30 stacks before they, want to kill you. Unfortunately, enemies don't have your best interests at heart. Thankfully, you're pretty much always in conflict when you're in PvP, so these stacks build up very frequently, but it is notable that your number one damage output is not going to be active until you've been in conflict for a little bit of time. Something else of note, too, is that you actually excel at medium to long range conflict. And that could be a bit annoying for Battlegrounds because there's really no benefit for you being on objectives. You actually do just as much damage further away than you would do up close, except if you're up close, you're now having to hit a lot more of your defensive skills and abilities, versus if you're a little bit further back, you can pretty much always use your damage bar. And that is a pretty important thing to note because Battlegrounds is an objective-focused game mode. This is definitely a build that I love in Cyrodiil, and in Battlegrounds, I feel like sometimes I'm still tweaking because I'm like, how much more, oomph do I need? How much more health, resistances, and things do I need? Because if you're constantly getting hit a lot more than you would be if you're in Cyrodiil, where you've got a lot more open space, open terrain, to be a bit more of a nuisance. Because let's talk about the pros now. The pros of this build is you are very mobile, and you pretty much have access to all of your abilities all the time. What I mean by that is you're not going to run out of resources. You could just keep peppering people with abilities all day. And the nice thing is you have access to one of the strongest executes in the game because it's a delayed execute in Mage's Wrath. You have one of the hardest hitting spammables in Crystal Frags. You have Haunting Curse, which takes people by surprise, and if they go into stealth and they get hit by it, they will explode out of stealth. Even Inner Light can be a good counter to people who are doing stuff like that to you. You have Negate Bubble, arguably one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. You can drop it on an objective and silence everybody on that objective. And what the Sorcerers have always been good at is single target pressure, which is fantastic for Battlegrounds. Sometimes if it's an 8v8 and you're the only person on an objective and all 8 of them are over there, you don't have a lot of easy access to countering an entire group of people. A lot of Sorcerers don't 1vx people. What I would say is if you start getting good at tap targeting people, which basically is just your ability saying, go to that person, even if it's kind of like they're halfway phased into somebody else, it can be very helpful at getting better at high tier Sorcerer gameplay. Also, too, just utilizing Streak as a stun. A lot of people, when they start out with a Sorcerer, they just use Streak to teleport as kind of a get to place faster ability or get out of conflict faster. It's a fantastic stun. One of the best stuns in the game. It can be a bit finicky as you start to learn it because you're going a certain distance each time. Just get good at it, keep practicing with Streak, and you will learn to love it. And so I've coined this build the Stockpile Sorcerer. It's not the most perfect Sorcerer build in the game because at the end of the day, the best build for you is going to be tailored to your needs. Feel free to change some of the things around on this build. I even think maybe some immobilization potions when you know that a Dragon Knight's about to knock you down, because oftentimes the deaths that you're going to accrue with this Sorcerer is when you're knocked down, and sometimes you just don't get up again quickly enough, unfortunately. The song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. It's not always true when they have Executioner Strike on their hotbar, but importantly, if you can counteract people's ability to do that, stay at a distance, keep people at a distance. And this has been the Stockpile Sorcerer. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What would you change? Let me know if you guys have any ideas for this. I always like in my build videos to talk about potential change, switcherooskies, things that I'm always looking at potentially changing. So as always, if there's any updates to this build, I will put them in the description, in the pinned comment. And if people have really good suggestions, I will also add them to my pinned comment, because everybody plays Sorcerer differently. And if you're interested in more Sorcerer build videos, I at all times keep 10 golded out Sorcerer sets in my person so I can quickly flip between them. I've got ones that are more geared towards the 1vx. I've got ones that are geared more towards dueling. This is just more of an introductory set. Really, everything here is pretty easy to obtain. Crafty Elfique is super cheap. You can craft Druid. Trainee is very affordable, and Death Dealer's Feat is a bit finicky to get, but it is definitely worth it. But everyone, thank you guys so much again for watching. As always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do to enter is leave a comment in the comments below. Tell me anything that you think, anything about this build, future builds, things that you'd like to see. Second thing is just make sure you're subscribed. We're on the road to 25,000 subscribers. And follow on Twitch and Twitter if you wouldn't mind. And the third thing is look for a hidden word be flashed upon the screen. If you're the first person to comment that word, you will win. Thank you guys so much again for watching, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.